Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle.
QIP is actually what you want for the exam.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are already there.
Yes.
But what is needed for the exam is what the QIP is giving you. QIP is actually quality improvement because I owe my success to it.
तो रैंकर्स बैच हैज़ चेंज. आई थिंक मेरी रैंक आई है बिकॉज ऑफ द रैंकर्स बैच. तो रैंकर्स बैच ज्वाइन करने के बाद आई थिंक मेरी वो टेंशन ख़त्म हो गई थी. एक कांस्टेंट गाइडेंस थी मेरे पास कि मुझे क्या पढ़ना है, कैसे पढ़ना है, कितने टेस्ट लिखने हैं. टेस्ट इवैल्यूएट करने में सर ने बहुत हेल्प की. एक एक टेस्ट के बाद सर और मैं बैठ के डिस्कस करते थे एक एक आंसर इनफैक्ट कि इस आंसर में कौन सा एग्जाम्पल गलत था या सही था, कैसे उसको इम्प्रूव करें.
मेंटर तो राउज में मतलब अलग ही लेवल में मेंटरशिप मिली थी. अभिषेक सर मेरे मेंटोर थे. अच्छा. तो ओवरऑल मेरे को काफ़ी वार्म सा सपोर्टिव सा एनवायरनमेंट मिला था राउज से और मेरे को काफ़ी अच्छा लगा था.
Okay.
So as you heard it from the toppers, how the QIP program helped them in acing this year's examination. Now the prelims result is already out and you might be wondering how to prepare in the next 3 months for this year's mains examination. The basic question that might be coming in your mind is that what are the key components of the QIP program? Let us listen it from Vaibhav sir.
Yes. So there are three very important elements of QIP mains. The first is of course the revision cum answer writing practice classes, for which the notes shall be provided in the form of Compass Maxi. Then the second important element of mains QIP is the mains test series, which will include very intensive feedback and evaluation. And then the third and the most important element of QIP mains is mentorship. And I think no one is better than you, Mangal sir, to throw some light on mentorship program.
Mentorship is important to declutter the process of this examination. We are going to handhold you to give you personalized solutions to your problems, be it answer writing, be it understanding the topics, and also understanding the pace at which you are preparing for this year's examination. Also, there are certain specific areas which require improvements like essay writing, ethics answer writing, and also answer writing for the general studies papers 1, 2, and 3. And that is why this personalized feedback and handholding is going to do wonders as it did for this year's toppers for the 2021.
So for those who have cleared the prelims examination, first and foremost, congratulations. And secondly, there is a link in the description of the video, which you can click, which will take you to submit a form. And after submitting that form, we are going to contact you. So do fill out this form by clicking the link in the description of the video. And all the best for Mains 2022.
All the best.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday DNS. Today we'll be discussing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 26 June 2022. And we'll be discussing the articles that have appeared in Indian Express Explained section in the last week. And the articles that we are going to discuss from the Indian Express and the Hindu newspaper are displayed on your screen. So let us start the discussion. This article on page number 12 is related to anti-defection and it reads, "Has the anti-defection law failed in India?" Now this has come into news again because of the constitutional crisis that is going on in Maharashtra. And it has already been in news in the past instances in the assemblies of Madhya Pradesh, Goa, Karnataka, Manipur, etc. And that is why the question is being asked that has the anti-defection law failed in India? Now defection simply means that when the members of the political parties and the sitting MLAs and MPs, if they switch their loyalties from one political party to another, it is called as defections. And this has become a major issue for the stability of the governments in some of the states. Now such instances of defections are not new and they have happened in the past also. So keeping in view the issue of defections, the Rajiv Gandhi government passed the Constitution's 52nd Amendment Act, which is famously called as the Anti-Defection Law. And as such, the provisions related to anti-defections were included in the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution. And this tried to stop the defections of the members or the sitting MLAs and the MPs of the political parties from one political party to another. And this law provided for elaborate provisions related to stopping the issue of political defections. Now, when the 52nd Amendment Act was passed, it was passed unanimously by all the parties because they recognized that political defections is a big issue for the stability of the governments. However, despite the formulation of the Anti-Defection Law, there have been instances of defections because there are certain loopholes in the Anti-Defection Law which are being exploited by different political parties. And that is why there has been constitutional crisis in case of assemblies where the majority of the ruling party is very thin. And that is why if the MLAs of one political party defect from one party to another, it can lead to the fall of the government of one political party and can lead to the formation of the government of another political party. So such loopholes have been exploited by the political parties in the past. So we also need to understand what are these loopholes in the Anti-Defection Law. Now, if you look at the syllabus of the UPSC mains examination in General Studies paper 2, the issue of anti-defection is related to constitution and polity. And in the mains examination also, the UPSC has asked a question related to anti-defection. Now, on the one hand, the Anti-Defection Law tries to stop the defection of the MLAs and the MPs from one political party to another. However, it is being seen that because of this Anti-Defection Law, the members of the political parties and the MPs and the MLAs have stopped questioning the government itself, and they have to follow the instructions of the political parties while voting in the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabhas. And that is why the question is, the role of the individual MPs or the members of the parliament has diminished over the years, and as a result, healthy constructive debates on the policy issues are not usually witnessed. How far can this be attributed to Anti-Defection Law? So the intention of the Anti-Defection Law was to stop defections of the members from one political party to another. However, this Anti-Defection Law is also seen as curbing the role of the individual MPs in criticizing and participating in healthy constructive policy related debates. So in this context, let us try and understand certain basics of the Anti-Defection Law. Where is it applicable? Who is the presiding officer? All of these aspects from preliminary examination perspective. And then let us try and understand what have been the various Supreme Court rulings which tried to stop the exploitation of the loopholes in the Anti-Defection Law. So let us understand all these things. Now, regarding the important provisions of the Anti-Defection Law, you should note that it was enacted for the disqualification of the members of the parliament and the state legislatures on the ground of defection from one political party to another. So as we have seen that there are instances when the MLAs and the MPs have been defecting from one political party to another. And especially we have seen that MLAs have defected in the assembly of Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh and in the state of Manipur. So accordingly, a constitutional amendment was brought in and it was known as the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Further, another important provision of the Anti-Defection Law is regarding the authority who decides on the disqualification of the members on the grounds of defection. And accordingly, the Anti-Defection Law has provided that the deciding authority regarding the disqualification of the members of parliament and the state legislatures on the ground of defection is the speaker or the presiding officer of that house. Further, this act provides as to when a member can be disqualified. So a member of legislative assembly or member of parliament can be disqualified on the ground of voluntarily giving up the membership of his or her political party. Further, a member can be disqualified if he or she votes or abstains from voting contrary to the directions which have been issued by the political party without obtaining prior permission. Thirdly, if an independent candidate joins any political party. And further, if a nominated member joins the political party after a period of 6 months. So these are the conditions when a member of legislative assembly or the parliament can be disqualified on the grounds of defections. Now there are certain exceptions that have been provided against the Anti-Defection Law. So in case there is merger of at least 2/3 of the members of a political party with another political party, this will not be considered as an issue of defection, and hence the MLAs or the MPs cannot be disqualified on the ground of defections if there is a merger of at least 2/3 of the members of a political party with another political party. And another exception that has been provided is that the Speaker of the House is allowed to give up the membership of the political party. So these are two exceptions, and these are the grounds on which a member of the Legislative Assembly or Parliament can be disqualified. And another important point is the deciding authority, and we note that it is the presiding officer of the respective houses.
Now, despite an elaborate anti-defection law, there have been instances that the members of the parliament and the legislative assemblies have been exploiting the loopholes of this law for switching from one political party to pursue their narrow interests. And accordingly, there have been certain interpretations of the Supreme Court on this anti-defection law. So, first issue that came up in front of the Supreme Court was regarding the voluntarily giving up of the membership, which is one of the grounds for disqualification of members of parliament and the state legislatures on the ground of defection. So, regarding the voluntarily giving up of the membership, it is known that the voluntary resignation from the political party amounts to defection, and hence a person can be disqualified on this ground. However, the Supreme Court has observed that the conduct of a member can also be considered as voluntarily giving up of the membership. So accordingly, if a member criticizes his or her own party and also provides a public support for the opposition parties, then it is considered that that member has voluntarily given up his membership of that political party, and hence this can be used as a ground for disqualification of that member of the House. Further, in the Kohito-Holohan case of 1993, the Supreme Court had decided that the decisions of the Supreme Court under the Anti-Defection Law are subject to judicial review. That is, they are not exempt from the judicial review. Further, in this recent Supreme Court judgment, it has set a time limit for the Speaker to decide on the issue of disqualification of the members of the Houses. And this time limit that has been provided by the Supreme Court is of 3 months. And further, the Supreme Court had clarified that the Supreme Court and High Court can issue the directions to the speakers for their functions under the Anti-Defection Law. So these are few interpretations of the Supreme Court regarding the Anti-Defection Law, and also we have seen certain important provisions of the Anti-Defection Law. Further, another important issue that came up in the Assembly of Karnataka was the resignation of the MLAs from the ruling party, and accordingly the Speaker had disqualified those MLAs. However, one condition that was imposed by the Speaker of Karnataka Assembly was that the members who have been disqualified cannot fight the elections for next 6 years. However, this decision of the Speaker of Karnataka Assembly was annulled by the Supreme Court of India, and it had said that the members who have been disqualified on the grounds of Anti-Defection Law can again fight elections for the remaining term of the Assembly. So again, that judgment also becomes very important related to the Anti-Defection Law. Now let us look at the loopholes in the Anti-Defection Law and how they are being exploited in the current crisis. Now in this context, we need to understand that Shiv Sena in the Maharashtra Assembly has 55 MLAs. And one of the leaders of Shiv Sena, Eknath Shinde, claims that he has the support of 40 MLAs with him. So in this line, this seems like a split in the Shiv Sena, where one leader is claiming the support of 40 MLAs, while another leader, who is the current CM of Maharashtra, Uddhav Thackeray, is claiming that he has the support of majority of the MLAs. In that case, this situation where Eknath Shinde has highlighted that he has the support of 40 MLAs would have been seen as a case of split from Shiv Sena. Now in this line, the original Anti-Defection Law had allowed splitting from the political party. And the rule was that if 1/3 of a legislature party leaves it or joins another party, it amounts to split. However, this split again was becoming a major cause of concern, and accordingly, it was again removed by the 91st Amendment Act of 2003. So simply, this split in the Shiv Sena will be unconstitutional in the case of Maharashtra Assembly. However, the other faction of the Shiv Sena, led by Eknath Shinde, is claiming to be merging with another political party. And since merger, as we have seen, is allowed, this group might merge with another political party to avoid disqualification under the Anti-Defection Law. Further, only if 2/3 of the party's total strength agrees to the merger can this group merge with another political party. Now here it is being claimed by Eknath Shinde that he has the support of 40 MLAs. In this line, to merge with another party, he will need the support of 37 MLAs. Now issue here is that if a member speaks against the party, disqualification proceedings can be started against that particular member. And that is why the Deputy Speaker of the Maharashtra Assembly has already initiated disqualification proceedings against some of the MLAs. So it is to be seen if the Eknath Shinde faction will have support of 37 MLAs or not. So this is basically a loophole which the
faction of the Shiv Sena is exploiting to merge with another political party. Now, this political crisis per se is not important for us from the exam perspective. However, what is important for us is that despite having anti-defection law, the defections still continue. And that is leading cause of instability of governments where the majority of the ruling party is thin. And such cases have been witnessed in past in case of Madhya Pradesh, Goa, Manipur, as well as in the current state of Maharashtra. This brings us to understanding what are the reasons for ineffective functioning of the anti-defection law, which was intended to reduce the defections of the MLAs and the MPs. So despite having such a law, there are certain loopholes in the implementation of the law. And in this line, the authority which has been provided with powers to act on the issue of defections, Speaker, has played a very partisan role in the past in various assemblies. In this line, the speakers of the assemblies in the past have failed to act on the instances of anti-defection. For example, in the assembly of Manipur, when the MLAs from Congress defected into BJP, the speaker of the assembly failed to act, and he kept on postponing the issue of acting on the disqualification of the defection of the members from Congress to BJP. This clearly highlights that the speaker was reluctant to act, and that highlighted the partisan role of the speaker aligning with one of the political parties. In this line, the Supreme Court in 2020 held that such delay is not justified and the speaker should act immediately on the issue of disqualification of these MLAs. And as such, one of the MLA who became the minister was also disqualified and removed from the cabinet. The second important reason for the ineffective functioning of the anti-defection law is the interference of the ruling party at the center. And we have seen various recent instances where we have witnessed the interference of the ruling party at the center in the state of affairs of the states like Manipur, Goa, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, and also in the current crisis that is going on in Maharashtra. Further, at the base of this issue of defections is the use of muscle and money power in politics. And finally, we are aware that there are certain loopholes in the anti-defection law which are being exploited by the political parties. And also at times there have been varying interpretations of the provisions of the anti-defection law, as we have seen in various instances, which at times the Supreme Court has tried to check, but it has not been fully effective in checking the misuse of or exploiting the varying interpretations of the articles of the anti-defection law. Now, one issue related to anti-defection is its ineffective functioning. However, another side of anti-defection is that it is curbing the freedom of speech and expression of the MPs and the MLAs. So let us look at that side also, which was covered in one of the previous DNS videos, where it was highlighted that the anti-defection law has not been that effective, and at the same time, this anti-defection law has curbed the freedom of speech and expression of the MPs and the MLAs, which has hindered the constructive debates on various policy issues. So let us look at that second aspect also. In the first part, we looked at the issues with the functioning of the anti-defection law, and in the second part, we will look at how the anti-defection law curbs the freedom of speech and expression of the current MLAs and the MPs. So the author says that the anti-defection law curbs the freedom of the legislators. And in this, it has been argued that it curbs the freedom to vote of the legislators significantly. That is because the legislators are expected to vote on the party lines in the legislatures or in the parliament. Now, regarding the role of a member of parliament in a democracy, there are two broadly accepted roles. First is that they are the agents of the voters and they are expected to vote according to the wishes and for the benefits of their constituents or the citizens whom they are representing in the legislatures. The other role of the parliamentarians is their duty to their constituents in order to exercise their judgment on various issues towards the broader public interests. So these are the two broadly accepted roles of the representatives in a democracy. And while exercising these roles, they deliberate with other members of parliaments and find a reasonable way through complex issues. And the author argues that the anti-defection law has curbed or narrowed down these two roles of the representatives in a democracy, because it makes the member of parliament neither a delegate of the constituency nor a nation legislator, but it converts them to be just an agent of the party. Because under the anti-defection law, the legislators are expected to vote only on the party line, and they cannot go against the wishes of the party on an issue even on which they are having a differing view from their party members. This is because, according to anti-defection law, the legislators cannot vote against the party lines, and accordingly, they cannot vote according to their own views on any matter of national importance. Further, the author says that MPs have no freedom to take decisions on any policy or legislative proposals, and the core role of an MP to examine and decide on policy bills and budgets is sidelined because of the very existence of the anti-defection law. And because of the existence of the anti-defection law and the expectation from the MPs to vote on the party lines, the MPs have just become another number that needs to be tallied by the party on any vote that it supports or opposes. And as such, the anti-defection law weakens the parliamentary accountability on various issues of national importance. Further, the author says that the issue of defection is a political problem, and accordingly it cannot be solved by the way of anti-defection law. So the author says that the problem arises from the attempt to find a legal solution to what is essentially a political problem. That is, the problem of defection is a political problem, and there cannot be a legal solution to this problem by the means of anti-defection law. And as such, the author argues that if stability of the government is an issue due to people defecting from their parties, the answer is for the parties to strengthen their internal systems. And as such, if these political parties attract members on the basis of ideology, and they have systems for people to rise within the party hierarchy on their capabilities rather than on inheritance, there would be a greater exit barrier. And these characteristics seem absent in many political parties, and we have seen a large number of defections despite the very existence of the anti-defection laws for past 2 decades. So in conclusion, the author says that the anti-defection law has been detrimental to the functioning of our legislatures as deliberative bodies, which hold the executive to account on behalf of the citizens. And this law has turned these legislatures into a forum to endorse the decisions of the government on the bills and the budgets. And this is because the members of parliament cannot take a contrary view against the view of the party on any matter, bill or budget. Further, author concludes that the anti-defection law has not even done the job of preserving the stability of the governments. And as such, he argues that the 10th schedule in which the anti-defection law has been provided must be repealed. This article on page number 12 is related to the extreme weather events that we are witnessing. In this line, the monsoon has already arrived in India. However, the rainfall that we are witnessing under the monsoon is varying considerably. In this, you should be aware that the Assam is facing flood-like situation. However, other parts of India are relatively dry. So what accounts for this variability in the monsoon at such a large scale where one part is witnessing floods while the other part is having a dry period? Now, to understand the basics of the monsoon and what is the mechanism of the monsoon, you can go through the NCERT of class 11th, that is India Physical Environment of Geography. In that, you will be able to understand how the monsoon actually develops, what are the various aspects of monsoon, and what are the leading causes of variability in the rainfall of the monsoon. However, in this article, in this discussion, we are going to restrict ourselves to what has been the observations and what are the causative factors for creating such extreme weather events. Now, already the monsoon had high amount of variability. However, this variability is further being exacerbated because of the increasing climate change, global warming, and various other factors. So let us look at these factors which can be important for us from General Studies paper 1 point of view in the mains examination. And also this can be an aspect in the environment section or disaster management section in the General Studies paper 3. So let us look at all these points now. So the first thing that should come into our mind is that what exactly has been the variation. So in this line, it has been highlighted that our country has received 2% less rain this year than it usually does between June 1 to June 23 every year. And there is 34% less rain over central India and 15% less over the peninsular India. And further highlighting the variability, it has been highlighted that the northeastern parts have received 32% more rainfalls than a normal year. And there has been widespread consequences or negative consequences of this increased rainfall in the northeastern part of India, because this has led to huge floods in case of Assam and has led to loss of life where around 117 people have died since April in the northeastern India. It has also led to the loss of infrastructure. Flash floods have led to landslides, which has been the cause of 38 people dying in case of Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya. And also, the flooding and its aftermath has displaced more than 55 lakh people. So this highlights the grave consequences that the variability in monsoon can have in different parts of India. In one part where the floods are being witnessed, these are some of the consequences of these floods. Now, what are the factors or what are the reasons behind such kind of variability in the Indian monsoon? That is our primary focus in this discussion. Let us look at all these factors now. So in this line, if you look at the factors that are leading to heavy rainfall in the northeastern parts of India and particularly in Assam, the first is of course the reason for high rainfall in the northeastern part of India. If you look at the geography and the physical map of India, you will find that the Himalayas have an east-west orientation here. And when the southerly winds, which are moisture-laden winds or also known as monsoon winds, when they blow from Bay of Bengal, they release all their moisture at the foothills of these northeastern Himalayas, which are perpendicular almost to these southwesterly winds. So because of this east-west orientation of the Himalayas, it blocks the moisture-laden southerly or southwesterly winds from Bay of Bengal. And this results in Arunachal Pradesh, Assam and Meghalaya receiving more rainfall than other northeastern states. Second factor that is responsible for increased rainfall in the northeastern part of India is the presence of an east-west trough. Now, a trough is simply a belt of low pressure area which extends over a large area. And because of the existence of low pressure, it attracts lot of moisture-laden winds towards itself. And this kind of trough is normally seen during monsoon period, and that is why it is known as monsoon trough. So this presence of the east-west monsoon trough in the lower levels of the atmosphere over the region and also incursion of large-scale moisture due to strong southerly and southwesterly winds, it is leading to heavy rainfall in the northeastern states of India. Second reason that is being understood is that climate change has increased the water as well as the surface temperature of Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal by up to 2 degrees. And this is causing frequent formations of low pressure areas and cyclonic circulation, which is resulting in heavy rainfall in some parts of India. The fourth important factor that has been understood according to a research is that there are aerosols which include black carbon that are released by biomass burning. And this influences the western part of northeast India, which is close to the Indo-Gangetic plain. Now, because of the rising black carbon emission, it leads to decrease in the low intensity rainfall while pushing up severe rain in the pre-monsoon season in the northeast India. So these are collectively seen as the factors which are responsible for increasing rainfall in northeast India in general and Assam in particular. So based on these factors, you should practice this particular question from the mains examination perspective, that is, Indian monsoon is characterized by temporal and spatial variability. Discuss the factors that affect the variability of Indian monsoon. So to answer this question, you can first go through the NCERT of class 11th and understand the various causative factors which are leading to temporal and spatial variability in the Indian monsoons, and then you can use the points that we have discussed in this particular article. So a collective use of these points with the NCERT will be more helpful for you to write this particular answer. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article has been taken from the explained section of the Indian Express, and it reads, what are the ecosensitive zones? Now, these ecosensitive zones have come into the news because of the protests by various farmers in the state of Kerala. And they are protesting against one of the orders of the Supreme Court, which had ordered the establishment of 1 kilometer ecosensitive zones around all protected areas, wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. In this context, we should be aware what exactly are these ecosensitive zones, what is the Supreme Court ruling, and how are the activities in the ecosensitive zones identified, which is a cause of protest by the farmers in Kerala. And then we will look at what is the significance of delineating ecosensitive zones as well as what are their challenges. So all the points that we discuss here can be important for us from both prelims examination perspective related to ecosensitive zones, while the points in the analytical part can be important for us from the environment and ecology in the general studies paper 3. Let us look at various aspects of this particular issue. So we'll be understanding this particular article in a question answer format. That is, what is an ecosensitive zone, which has been highlighted in this article. So these ecosensitive zones are notified by the central government through the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the provisions of Environment Protection Act 1986. So this can become an important point for us from the prelims examination perspective. However, you should note that the term eco-sensitive zone has not been mentioned in the Environmental Protection Act. So this is an important fact that although the eco-sensitive zones are notified under the Environmental Protection Act 1986, the word eco-sensitive zone has not been mentioned in the Act directly. Second is that according to the National Wildlife Action Plan 2002 to 2016, which has been issued by the same ministry, the land within 10 kilometers of the boundaries of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries is to be notified as eco-fragile zones or eco-sensitive zones. And areas beyond 10 kilometers can also be identified by the Union Government as ESZ if they hold larger ecologically important sensitive corridors. So basically they are notified by the central government and they can notify any particular area. And if the central government wants to extend the eco-sensitive zones beyond this limit of 10 kilometers, they can do easily. So this brings us to what is the purpose of declaring an eco-sensitive zone. So according to the ministry, the purpose of declaring an eco-sensitive zone around national park and sanctuaries is to create some kind of shock absorbers for the protected areas. And they would also act as a transition zone from area of high protection in areas involving less protection. So this brings us to what is this Supreme Court ruling. However, the first question that should come into our mind is that why was this ruling required? So we are aware that the central government has issued this notification of creating 10-kilometer buffer zone which should be known as the eco-sensitive zones. However, successive state governments have failed to execute this. Further, the Supreme Court has also issued many deadlines to declare the ecologically sensitive zones since 2006, and also the central government has come out with guidelines. But the state governments have repeatedly failed to execute these guidelines and declaration of ecologically sensitive zones. In this line, the Supreme Court has provided this ruling. So what are the key features of this ruling? First is that the Supreme Court has directed that each protected forest should have an eco-sensitive zone of at least 1 kilometer. And in this eco-sensitive zone, no permanent structure will be allowed. Further, mining within the wildlife sanctuaries and national parks cannot be permitted. Further, it highlights that if there is any existing ecologically sensitive zone which goes beyond 1 kilometer buffer zone, or if any statutory instrument prescribes a higher limit, then such extended boundary shall prevail, which means that there should be minimum 1 kilometer of ecologically sensitive zone or buffer zone around the protected areas. If the protected buffer zone extends beyond this 1 kilometer zone, then that will be the criteria that will be accepted, and it can be extended beyond 1 kilometer. There is no limit on extension. However, the ecologically sensitive zone cannot be reduced below 1 kilometer limit. In this line, the farmers are protesting because there is high density of human population near the notified protected areas. And as such, they have been demanding that all the human settlements be exempt from the ESZ ruling. So this brings us to what kind of activities are allowed in the ecologically sensitive zone. So if you look at the kind of activities, some are allowed, others are regulated, and some are clearly prohibited. So let us look at these. So if you look at the allowed activities within the buffer zones or the ecologically sensitive zones, it can include ongoing agriculture, horticultural practices by local communities, rainwater harvesting, organic farming, renewable energy source adoption of green technology for all activities, etc. As far as regulated activities are concerned, it can include felling of tree, establishment of hotels and resorts, drastic change of agriculture system, but these activities will have to be regulated, and there is a long list of activities which are regulated. And as far as prohibition is concerned, the activities which are prohibited include commercial mining, commercial use of firewood, establishment of major hydroelectricity projects, production of any hazardous substance, and undertaking activities that are related to tourism like overflying the national park area by an aircraft, hot air balloon, discharge of affluent and solid waste in the national water body or terrestrial area. So these are the activities that are clearly prohibited, these are regulated, and the others are allowed in the ecologically sensitive zones which extend beyond the boundaries of the protected areas like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. So as we have seen certain features of the ecologically sensitive zones, let us look at the significance of these ecologically sensitive zones. So as we are aware that these are transition or buffer zones, and that is why they help in mitigating the adverse impact of developmental activities in the periphery of the national parks and the wildlife sanctuaries. They further regulate the exploitation of resources and minimizes the deforestation. Also, they help in minimizing man-animal conflict, and also they help in effective in situ conservation of biodiversity. However, there are certain challenges as far as the ecologically sensitive zones are concerned. First challenge is the development versus conservation debate, because the peripheries of the national park and wildlife sanctuaries have human settlements, and these areas are also important for commercial activities, and that is why the balancing of developmental activities with that of conservation has been a cause of concern. Further, the buffer zones are not pure buffer zones because already several activities of locals are being affected due to existing regulations of conservation sites. And local communities have struggled to get compensation against loss of crops by wild animals under the present regulations. And at the same time, there has been administrative apathy in recognizing and executing the Forest Right Act effectively because it has been used as a regulating provision rather than facilitating the community rights. So these are certain challenges also in the implementation of the ecologically sensitive zones. After going through this discussion, you can practice this question from the mains examination perspective. That is, what are eco-sensitive zones? Which activities are allowed, regulated and prohibited in these zones? Highlight the challenges in the implementation of these ESZ guidelines in the context of the recent Supreme Court ruling. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article from Indian Express Explained section highlights that Odisha's Moba Service has won the United Nations prestigious Public Service Award. Now, this can become a very important article for us from the prelims examination perspective. Because if you look at this question that was asked in the prelims examination of 2021, we were required to identify if Hyderabad was recognized as Tree City of the World by the United Nations Capital Development Fund or not. So accordingly, we should be aware that which body has given the award to Moba Service of Odisha, or you can be asked the question in other format, that is, the UN's Public Service Award has been provided to which city's public transportation. So you can get confused with Odisha and other states of India. So that is why we need to be aware of this simple information which can be important for us from the prelims examination perspective. Now if you look at the Moba Service, it is the bus service of Odisha's Capital Region Urban Transport Authority, that is in the Bhubaneswar area, and it has been recognized by the United Nations as one of the 10 global recipients of its annual Public Service Awards for 2022. Further, the way in which the Moba service has functioned can also be used as an example in various questions in the general studies in the mains examination. Now, this Mo service incorporated real-time technologies like live tracking, travel planner, e-ticketing, etc. And when you are writing answers related to urbanization, you can use this as a case study to improve the urban public transport. Further, this system also incorporated an e-rickshaw system which is called as Mo E-Ride, and it has been introduced as a last mile feeder service. Further, 40% of the Mo bus conductors are women, 100% of the Mo E-Ride drivers are women, transgender people and people from disadvantaged communities. And it is estimated that it will be reducing the pollution by 30 to 50%. So this clearly highlights that this kind of initiative is environmentally sustainable. It is going to improve the use of local transport and is going to facilitate organized and sustainable urbanization, and also it incorporates the developmental issues and inclusive growth as well. So this can be a perfect case study for mains examination in General Studies paper 1 in the topic urbanization. Then we have the UN Public Service Award, so we should also be aware of some facts related to this. So the UN describes its Public Service Award as the most prestigious international recognition in the public service. It is intended to reward the creative achievements and contributions of public service institutions that lead to a more effective and responsive public administration in countries worldwide. And the first such award ceremony was held in 2003. So these are few points related to this. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article from the Indian Express Explained section is regarding one of the landmark judgments of the Supreme Court of United States of America. And this judgment has reversed the Roe versus Wade judgment that the Supreme Court itself had provided. So this Roe versus Wade judgment has now been overturned in the present ruling of the US's Supreme Court. Now, the landmark 1973 Roe versus the Wade judgment had made abortion a constitutional right and had allowed women the right to choice related to abortion. However, the present judgment has reversed this Roe versus Wade judgment and it now allows the federal states to decide upon the legality of abortion, as court believed that the issue of abortion must be decided by the people's elected representatives. Now, this present judgment of the US's Supreme Court becomes important because it takes away the right of the women over the abortion, and that is why it can have consequences worldwide. In this context, India has also been amending its abortion law. So let us look at what are the key amendments that have been introduced in the abortion law, and also what are the various improvements that are required in India's law. And let us revise that from a previous DNS video where we have covered all these aspects of India's abortion laws. Now, to understand the issues associated with the abortion, let us try and understand what exactly does the data say. So there are different data that have been published by World Health Organization, the National Family Health Survey of India, Lancet report of 2018, and different journals. So accordingly, the World Health Organization related data says that 6 out of the 10 of all the unintended pregnancies finally end in an induced abortion. And around 45% of all these abortions are unsafe. And of all these unsafe abortions, 97% take place in developing countries, and India being one of the developing countries, this is a cause of concern. Further, the National Family Health Survey of 2019 and 2021 highlighted that 3% of all the pregnancies in India result in abortion. And more than a quarter of abortions, that is 27%, are performed by women themselves at home. However, this is not considered to be a safe practice in the absence of medical practitioners. Further, the Lancet report of 2018 says that 73% of all the abortions in India in 2015 were medication abortions, that is, they did not require any surgical procedure. And another 5% of all the abortions were outside of the health facilities with methods other than the medication abortion, and these were a cause of concern. Further, regarding the issues associated with unsafe medical abortion, the abortions account for about 10% of the maternal deaths in India, and an estimated 6.8 million fewer female births will be recorded across India by 2030 because of persistent use of selective abortions. So clearly, this is some data related to the issue of abortion in India, which can be used in answers in the mains examination. So after this, let us look at what are the physical health risks that are associated with an unsafe abortion. So first in this line is the incomplete abortion. And this basically highlights the failure to remove or expel all the pregnancy tissues from the uterus. Second is heavy bleeding or hemorrhage in the uterine area. And third is infection, which can take place in case of unsafe practices or unsafe medical practices outside the recognized medical practitioners. Then this can lead to uterine perforation, and it can also lead to damage to the genital tract and internal organs as a consequence of inserting dangerous objects into vagina or anus. So these are certain physical health risks that are associated with unsafe abortions, and that is why this practice of unsafe abortion needs to be checked. And that is why we have the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act that was first formulated in 1970 and then it was amended in 2021. Let us look at the features of these two acts. So now if you compare the provisions of the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971 and the amendments that have been brought out in the year 2021, the first issue here is that who can go for medical abortion of pregnancy in case of contraceptive failure. Now, in case of contraceptive failure, earlier, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971 recognized that only married women could get their pregnancy terminated medically. However, the 2021 amendments have now included unmarried women also, removing the stigma related to pregnancy of the unmarried women. The second is related to the revision of gestation age limit. Now, normally it is considered that abortion is safe till 20th week of gestation. However, the new Amendment Act provides that it can go till 24 weeks for rape survivor, and beyond that it can go for 24 weeks for substantial fetal abnormalities. Further, who can suggest the medical termination of pregnancy? So in that case, opinion of the registered medical practitioners is important. So in the 1971 Act, it was provided that for medical termination of pregnancy till 12 weeks, only one registered medical practitioner's opinion is required. And for pregnancy termination till 20th weeks, there was requirement of opinion of 2 registered medical practitioners, that is 2 RMP. However, this has now been changed, and in the 2021 Act, the opinion of only one registered medical practitioner is required for termination of pregnancy till 20 weeks. However, till 24 weeks, the opinion of two registered medical practitioners is required. And beyond 24 weeks, a medical board will have to be constituted who will consider the case of medical termination of pregnancy. Further, in case of breach of confidentiality, earlier there was punishment of up to rupees 1000. And now such breach of confidentiality shall be punishable with imprisonment which may extend to 1 year or fine or with both. So these are certain changes that have been brought about in the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971 on these fronts, which include gestation age limit, the opinion required by the registered medical practitioners, and also who can get the pregnancy aborted. In this case, let us look at what are certain benefits and what are certain challenges that still remain. So if you look at the benefits that are going to accrue because of the new amendments that have been brought about, it expands the access of women to safe and legal abortion services. We are aware that even the unmarried women can now seek medical abortion of their pregnancy. So the scope has been expanded. Secondly, the proposed increase in the gestational age will ensure dignity, autonomy, and confidentiality as well as justice for women. Further, the amendments will provide legal protection to the medical practitioners who otherwise would be penalized under the Indian Penal Code for induced miscarriage. Fourthly, it will contribute towards ending preventable maternal mortality to help meet the Sustainable Development Goals, which aims at reducing the maternal mortality considerably. However, despite the changes that have been brought out in the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 2021, there are certain challenges that still remain. First is that the decision of abortion solely rests on the registered medical practitioner's opinion, and it fails to recognize the right of the women to decide the abortion of the pregnancy. So this stands as one of the challenges, that the opinion of registered medical practitioner is final and not that of the women. So here the right of the women has not been recognized. Secondly, the Act only mentions pregnant women and does not recognize transgenders and others who do not identify themselves as women. Thirdly, the mandatory reporting under the POCSO Act 2012 against child sexual offences impacts privacy and hinders the access of adolescents to safe abortion services. And finally, persistent continuation of illegal practice of sex determination leads to unsafe abortion practices and female feticides, which go unaddressed in the MTP Amendment Act of 2021. So these are certain benefits as well as certain challenges that still need to be addressed related to the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act of 2021. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Besides the articles that we have discussed, there are two important articles for us from the prelims examination perspective. This is the article that is present in the Indian Express Explained section, and it highlights the importance of Snake Island. Now, this Snake Island of Ukraine is strategically very important, and it is located at a very important location. And in this line, Ukraine has attacked Russia's military arsenal on this Snake Island. So the location of this Snake Island becomes important for us from the prelims examination perspective. And you might be aware that already the Black Sea has been in news because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So this Snake Island is located in the Black Sea. It lies to the west of the Crimean Peninsula, which was occupied by Russia back in 2014. Further, we should be aware that which countries surround the Black Sea, and this can also be an important aspect for us from prelims examination perspective. So if you look at the countries that surround Black Sea, these include Turkey, Georgia, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, and Bulgaria. So these are the countries that surround or share a border with the Black Sea, and we have seen the location of Snake Island and Crimean Peninsula. There is another article in the Hindu newspaper which is on page number 7, and it is about declaration of a site in Udaipur as the wetland of national importance under Ramsar Convention. In this line, this lake is important bird area, and that is why its status as wetland of national importance will be important for the conservation of the nature as well as the birds. So in this line, the Menar in Udaipur district is said to be notified as Rajasthan's new wetland. So there are two lakes in the villages Brahma and Dand, and they play host to a large number of migratory birds. At present, if you look at other Ramsar sites in Rajasthan, these include Kevladev Ghana in Bharatpur and Sambhar Salt Lake in Jaipur. And there are more than 150 species of local and migratory birds which inhabit these two lakes in Menar in Udaipur. And some of the important birds that visit these two lakes include greater flamingo, white-tailed lopwing, pelican, marsh harrier, bar-headed geese, common teal, green shank, pintail, wagtail, green sandpiper, as well as red wattled lapwing. With this, we conclude today's discussion, and this is the question for the day.